Welcome back to our latest deep dive. Today we're tackling a market you might not think about daily, but it's absolutely essential: sodium silicate.
That's right. Water glass, as it's sometimes called.
Exactly. And our mission here is to really unpack a big market report for you. We'll look at sales from 2021, peak at 2025 projections, and then cast our eyes out to 2033.
And we'll be paying close attention to those compound annual growth rates, the CGRs. They tell a really interesting story.
Yeah, they really do. The aim is to give you the key takeaways on a market that's, well, surprisingly large and definitely on the move.
And it really is surprisingly large. We're talking billions here. Sometimes looking at these, let's say, less glamorous industries gives you a fantastic snapshot of broader economic trends.
Couldn't agree more. So, before we hit the numbers, maybe just a quick word on what sodium silicate is. We mentioned water glass.
Right. It's this incredibly versatile inorganic chemical. You find it in detergents acting as a binder.
Adhesives, corrosion inhibitors.
Paper production, textiles, even treating water. It's really fundamental stuff.
Which is why the market's so robust, I guess. Its fingers are in so many industrial pies.
That versatility is absolutely the key. Demand is tied to just so many different sectors globally.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the big global picture. So, in 2021, global sales revenue was sitting just under $10.8 billion.
$10,796.5 million, to be precise.
That's right. And by 2025, that's expected to climb to nearly $12.7 billion.
$12,727.9 million.
But the longer view, out to 2033, we're looking at almost $17.7 billion.
$17,688.8 million projected.
Which boils down to a global CAGR, a compound annual growth rate, of a pretty steady 4.2%.
And what's fascinating there, I think, is just how consistent that 4.2% is over a whole decade.
Yeah.
It really points to stable, expanding demand worldwide, driven by those core industrial uses we talked about. It's not some speculative bubble. It feels like sustained momentum.
Like real foundational growth.
Exactly. Deep-rooted economic factors at play.
Okay, so that's the global foundation. How does it look when we slice it up regionally? Let's start with North America.
All right.
The overall market there was, what, over $4.5 billion back in 2021?
4,556.4 million, yeah.
And that's heading towards over $7.3 billion by 2033.
7,358.52 million gives it a regional KGR of about 4.075%. So slightly under the global average, but still strong.
Right. And within North America, no huge surprise, the U.S. leads the pack.
About $3.7 billion in 2021, projected to $5.7 billion by 2033.
With the GRR around 3.76%. Steady.
Steady is the word. Canada shows a bit more pep, actually.
Yeah, I saw that. Around $483 million in 2021, climbing towards $838 million. That's a 4.74% CAGR.
A bit faster growth there, but the real standout in North America.
Has to be Mexico, right?
Absolutely. Look at these numbers. $366 million in 2021, projected to surge past $500 million by 2025, and then reaching nearly $790 million by 2033.
Wow. And the CAGR?
An impressive 5.817%. That's significantly higher than the U.S. and Canada.
It really is. What do you think is driving that?
Well, it strongly suggests some dynamic factors down there. Maybe accelerated industrialization, perhaps expansion in manufacturing, automotive, construction.
Right.
Sectors that just eat up sodium silicate.
Right. A real investment in industrial capacity, perhaps.
Seems likely. It's definitely an outlier within the region.
Okay, fascinating. Let's pivot now. Across the globe to Asia-Pacific. This region really posted some, well, huge numbers.
Yeah, this is where a lot of the action is.
So the overall market was about $2.6 billion in 2021.
2,591.17 million.
But projected to basically double, hitting over $4.7 billion by 2033.
4,711.4 million.
And this gives it the highest regional CGR we're going to see today, right?
Yeah.
The striking 5.165%.
It is. And thinking bigger picture, it's not a huge shock. Asia-Pacific is just such a powerhouse for manufacturing.
The global hub.
Exactly. Plus, you have ongoing urbanization, massive infrastructure projects across many economies there.
Makes sense. So within APAC, obviously, China is the dominant player.
Dominant, yes. Valued near $900 million in 2021, growing towards $1.7 billion by 2033. That's a strong 5.497% CAGR.
Very strong. Japan also growing steadily, I see, around 4.68%.
Yep, $516 million up to $890 million predicted. solid growth.
But what about the other sort of powerhouses driving that regional average up so high? Because 5.16% is really moving.
Well, two really stand out, India and Taiwan.
Okay.
India's projected CAGR is a very impressive 6.145%. We're talking about $262 million in 2021, scaling up to over $532 million.
Wow, okay. And Taiwan.
Taiwan actually boasts the highest CGR in the entire region, maybe even globally in this report. Let me check. Yes, looks like it. It's 6.349%.
Over 6.3%. That's remarkable for a relatively smaller market size, starting around $80 million.
It is. It suggests really rapid industrial expansion or specific sector growth. And don't forget Southeast Asia as a whole.
Right, Asian countries and others.
Showing a collective CAGR of 5.646%. And even the rest of APAC category is projected at a very strong 6.4%.
So the story here is really broad-based growth across Asia, isn't it? Not just the giants, but emerging economies rapidly building up industrial capacity.
Absolutely. It's a clear signpost pointing to where a lot of the world's new industrial demand is originating.
Okay, let's shift gears and head over to Europe. What's the picture there?
A bit more varied, I'd say.
Okay. The overall European market, starting at about $1.9 billion in 2021,
$1,900.19 million.
is forecasted to reach just under $3 billion by 2033.
$2,928.62 million.
Which reflects a more modest KGR compared to Asia, 3.555%.
Right. More moderate overall growth.
And we see some of the big economies like Germany growing around 3.8%, France close to 3.3%. The UK is a bit higher, interestingly, at 4.4%.
Yeah, the UK number is slightly stronger there, but what really catches the eye in Europe are some of the, let's say, slower growth rates.
Like where?
Well, look at Switzerland. The CAGR is projected at just 1.776%, and Luxembourg is even lower at 1.419%.
Okay, so significantly slower than the regional average. What's the interpretation there? Mature markets.
That's likely a big part of it. These are highly developed, established industrial economies. Their demand for basic inputs like sodium silicate might be reaching saturation, or perhaps they're shifting towards more specialized, lower volume chemical production. It's just a different phase.
Right, not necessarily bad news, just different dynamics. But here's something odd. The rest of Europe category,
Yes, that one jumps out.
it actually projects the highest TGR in Europe, doesn't it? Over 6.5%.
6.529%, yeah. From $95 million up to $174 million. It's quite the contrast to Switzerland and Luxembourg.
So what's going on there? That category must be hiding some real growth hotspots.
It must be. It makes you think about perhaps countries in Eastern Europe or specific regions undergoing major infrastructure development or industrial revitalization. Something is driving that average way up.
Fascinating little mystery hidden in the data there. Okay, next stop, South America.
South America, showing a steady climb.
Yeah, overall market going from about $561 million in 2021
$561.42 million.
to projected over $873 million by 2033.
$873.589 million. Gives it a KGR of about 3.837%. So pretty much in line with, say, the U.S. growth rate.
Right, and within the region, it looks like one country really dominates the landscape.
Oh, absolutely. Brazil is the heavyweight here. It started at $243 million in 2021 and is projected to hit over $400 million by 2033.
And its AGR.
A solid 4.43%. Clearly, Brazil's industrial scale is driving a large part of the continent's demand.
Makes sense. Though other countries like Argentina and Colombia are showing decent growth too, around the 4% mark.
Indicating fairly widespread, if varied, industrial activity across the region.
Okay, moving on to the Middle East. Another region showing some pretty robust growth numbers for sodium silicate.
Yeah, definitely some strong signals coming from there.
Overall market projected to grow from roughly $496 million in 2021.
496.641 million.
Up to over $864 million by 2033.
864.073 million, and that's a CAGR of 4.609%. Quite healthy.
Very healthy indeed. Which countries are really pushing that growth?
Well, Saudi Arabia stands out. It accounts for a big chunk of the market and has a projected CAGR of just over 5%.
5.007%. Strong.
And the UAE is even slightly higher at 5.216%.
Okay, so those two are really significant drivers.
Absolutely. It really highlights the economic diversification efforts happening there. They're investing heavily in non-oil sectors, manufacturing, construction, big infrastructure projects.
Which naturally pulls in demand for foundational materials like this.
Exactly. It reflects those longer-term strategic shifts away from just oil and gas. Turkey and Egypt also show decent growth above 4%.
Good point. Okay, last but not least, let's look at Africa.
Right. Africa's overall market is expected to grow from about $690 million in 2021
$690.979 million.
over $952 million by 2033.
952.211 million. But interestingly, its overall CAGR is the lowest regionally, isn't it? Just 2.704%.
It is. That's the lowest average we've seen across all the regions. But the story within Africa is quite divided.
How so?
Well, you have South Africa, which holds the largest market share. It's projected to grow at a more respectable 3.39% CAGR.
Okay, closer to some European countries.
Right. Nigeria, another major economy, shows growth too, but slightly lower at 2.56%.
That's still positive growth. But what about the rest?
That's where the picture changes dramatically. The rest of Africa category. Well, its projected CAGR is just 0.983%, barely 1%.
Wow, that's a huge disparity compared to South Africa or even Nigeria.
It really is, and it points to very different stages of industrial development across the continent. Some economies are clearly investing in growing their industrial base, driving demand.
While others are developing much more slowly, at least in terms of industries that use a lot of sodium silicate.
Exactly. It's a very segmented picture. Not one single African growth story, but many different ones happening at different paces.
Okay, so we've circled the globe. Let's try and wrap this up. What does this all mean for you, our listener, trying to make sense of these numbers?
Well, I think the big takeaway is clear. The global sodium silicate market is growing consistently. That 4.2% global CAGR through 2033 is solid.
Right. But the really interesting part isn't just the overall growth, it's where it's happening fastest and maybe why.
Precisely. We saw that huge dynamism in Asia-Pacific, led by countries like China, India, Taiwan, but also Southeast Asia. That's clearly a major engine.
And the Middle East, with Saudi Arabia and the UAE driving strong growth through diversification.
And even within slower regions, you had those pockets of faster growth, like Mexico standing out in North America.
Or that intriguing rest of Europe category showing surprising strength.
Yeah, so it's a nuanced picture, not just uniform growth, but growth shaped by regional trends, development stages, and specific national initiatives.
So maybe the final thought to leave with everyone is this.
Go ahead.
If you see these varying growth rates, fast in Asia, moderate in Europe, slower overall in Africa, but with internal variation, what bigger economic shifts might this be signaling?
That's the key question, isn't it? How does understanding the demand for something as basic as sodium silicate actually give you a lens on, say, global industrial development patterns?
Or maybe even where future infrastructure investment is likely to be concentrated.
Right. How might tracking these specific market movements, even for a chemical you rarely think about, sharpen your perspective on where the global economy is heading? Something to ponder.
Definitely something to ponder. It shows how even seemingly niche data can tell a much larger story. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning that data.
See you next time.